All right. So when you generate the whisk, the waste, and not the WJ, the whisk and the waste, you're gonna have two different options. One is called the score report, this one, and then one is called the interpretive report. We purchased the interpretive because I want you to see how it's kind of formatted and then recommendations that comes underneath that, okay? But with the score report, what you'll get is the exact same thing as the interpretive report. Essentially, the whisk and the waste look very identical, where you have the demographics of your client that you'll put in, and we'll practice that later, and then your overall scores. So why I tell you to read ahead of time is because when I get back next week, you should be able to tell me the difference between a skill score, a standard score, a T-score, and a Z-score. You should. Now, if you don't, that means you did not read. These scores are used across all tests. So the more you get familiar with terminology, what's considered to be average, standard deviations, that terminology you need to be familiar with. You don't have to master it right now, just know what it means. To have a mean of 10 and a standard deviation of 3. What does that mean? So when we cover that lecture, it's going to be very overwhelming if you don't read. So try and read. Cool? All right. So you'll see this kind of outline where you have all the scales from the whisk. These are all the things you'll be assessing. These are all the subtests that go into these skills. As an example, visual spatial is made up of block designs and visual puzzles. Working memory is made up of digit span, picture span, and letter number sequencing. Is anyone noticing that these are in parentheses? Yeah. Do you know why?
Subsections or subtypes?
Sort of. They're substitutes. Essentially, if one of these tests is spoiled, meaning not valid, not good, you can use a third test to supplement one of these two tests. So each one has, except for this one, an ability to substitute tests if the test session is spoiled. And we'll cover that next week.
How often does that happen?
Very often with small children. Not very often with like 6 and up.
That makes sense.
But little kids usually, they're little kids. So then we have, this report gives you the raw scores, which you will not report. Your scaled scores, which will cover the range. Percentile ranks, again, not covering this, age equivalency. And the standard error of measurement, which we'll cover next week. This report also gives you the exact same scores in a graph format, which I think is nice. If you notice this little, you really can't see it here, can you? No, you can't see it. It's very faint. This line right here is dark. Right here is dark. It goes all the way across. So it's like right here, this 10 mark.
I can see it on the other display.
Yeah. You kind of see it, kind of sort of. So this 10 line is the average range, right? So scores above it or on it is average. Scores below it, below average.
And these scaled scores are averaged in such a way that the average is the same across all
tests.
reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
So scale scores, T-scores, Z-scores, and standard scores are across every single test imaginable. Psychological, personality, adaptives, cognition, academics, all the same score ranges, all the same score types, all the same average ranges. It's consistent across all tests.
Since these scores are standardized, wouldn't the score that a person gets also potentially change what their standardized score is over time as more data gets added into the comparison?
It could, yeah. It could change over time. Possibility, yes. Most people don't go through rounds of testing. Most people just do it once and that's it, or every 3-5 years. So it doesn't change that much drastically, but yeah, you can.
Oh.
I wasn't thinking the person retaking the test, I
Gotcha.
was thinking just the single score, would what the standardized output change over time as more things get added to the pool?
No, it's pretty much consistent across the
So
board.
it's
Yeah.
not like a live comparison?
No, not
Okay.
live at all. No.
Okay.
No, it's set in stone.
Okay, going back to like right above this with the substitutes, the in parentheses. So do you give those like regardless and you just use them if
No.
they're necessary?
No, you
Okay,
only
so-
give them as a spoiled session.
Okay, so do these just all have like scores for example or
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So like
So you can
this
see it
this
all.
realistically like wouldn't be like you probably wouldn't be spoiled in every area.
No,
Okay.
this person did.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
They did not sit still
No.
during the entire thing.
Yeah. So these are your subtests. So these are all your subtest scores. That's one set of scores. The most important scores are these. These are your composites. Thus, your full skill IQ, your processing speed, working memory, fluid reasoning, visual, spatial, and verbal comprehension. We'll cover what these means later. But these are your composite scores. If you notice, and why I hate this program, is the first score they enter is the sum of skill scores, which is pretty much adding these together, right? This is confusing the families because this is the first thing they see, and so when you see a 67 here, you may think, holy crap, that's a very low IQ. Not knowing it's a score next to it, at a score of 97.
Didn't even put it in bold.
Why? I don't know. Don't ask me. So ignore this. Go straight to composites, and then this. So qualitative description tells you where the score lands: average, high average, low average. Your confidence interval. Essentially, if they took this test again, where their scores will fall under. So if they took this test again in 3 years, there's a 95% chance that their score will range from 91 to 103. We'll cover what this means later. This is your standard error of measurement. Essentially, it allows you some wiggle room if things change in the future, or if the test was administered wrong or incorrect, or you get an off day. It gives you some wiggle room to know that the score will range within this range. And then descriptions for each subtest, composites. And then again, its own graph format. The line is dark at 100, can't really see it right now, but it tells you where the scores kind of lie within an average range. And then more data. So, it also gives you the strengths and weaknesses compared to each other, comparison across domains, which we'll cover later, and then more comparisons. This is just one report using the WISC-5. Most clinics use this kind of report to give you an overall rundown of your scores. It is then your job to take these scores, interpret, and write in a paragraph format. But we purchased the interpreter. Essentially, it's the exact same thing as the score report, but if you notice, it gives you the wording. So, in a way, when you're writing your own report, you're going to be pulling from this one and then adding more information to write your report. Because ultimately, the wording doesn't really change in relation to the subtests. They're the same subtests, same descriptions. You're not changing the description of the test. It's the same across the board. And so this gives you a rundown of the scores, what they mean. It also tells you whether it's a strength or weakness as well. So it gives you lots of information regarding the scores you just input into the system.
This looks a lot like hypothesis reporting.
Yeah.
Like you run an experiment and this is what
That's
you
what it
talk
sounds like,
about.
yeah.
Exactly like
Yes,
that. Yeah.
very similar. So this report gives you a rundown on all the scores, strengths, weaknesses, what the scores mean. Essentially, if you're a bad clinician, you're gonna print this out and sign your name on it, right? And call it good. But you're not gonna do that. You're gonna pick the information and then add more to it and make it individualized.
So this interpretive report, is that the output that the thing gives you that we then pull stuff?
Exactly.
Okay, so this is not the part we write, this is the part we use to write.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So it kind of will guide your report for you, which is nice.
Mhm.
This report also gives you recommendations. So down here, all the way down here,
And this is a computer generated report, right?
Yes.
I could see why people just copy and paste this thing. You know what I mean?
I understand. I
Because
understand.
they would think no one's gonna notice me
Right.
doing
I mean,
this,
it's-
because look at all this information.
It looks good.
It looks good.
I mean, like for the client, this is gonna be too much information.
Yeah, they
in
wouldn't
terms
be able
that
to
are not,
notice.
that are difficult
It's
to
too much.
understand. Like say, maybe if your client is a child whose parent is also a clinician,
Yeah.
that would be different. They might actively want this, but
For the most part, it's too much.
yeah.
As you're gonna use all this wording, you're like, what does this mean?
So-
Where's the easy to read?
Yeah, so whereas the other report that's just the raw statistics, we'd be building off of that.
Exactly.
With this one, we're more trimming it down and then adding our stuff into
Exactly.
it. Okay.
Would it be poor practice to have, let's say, your own report, but then also provide this one?
Yes. Don't do that.
Don't do that?
Recommendations.
Like you wouldn't have both?
No, you just have one. It's your end product. Because you don't want to be like, here's my end product and here's another end product. So like, which one do I like better? Like, no. Yeah, it's just one.
I wasn't really going against, I guess, not really that line of thinking, but
Yeah.
more, I guess, in line of being informed consent where.
Gotcha.
Well,
Yeah.
this is what I built upon, and this is a lot of information, so I've condensed it down.
I see. So you want to share everything. So you wouldn't want to share that with them, but for your purposes, you would share it for yourself. So for you, yes. For them, yeah. They don't need to know.
So like for documentation purposes?
Yes.
Okay.
It also gives you recommendations. So you could use these and add more to it as well. Again, pretty decent recommendations, but they are very cookie cutter. And they're kind of hard to understand. So sometimes you're like, what does it actually mean? So again, taking it and breaking it down in simple terms. But there are some examples you can use.
If you're given, say, an actual treatment recommendation of something's set in stone to the point where you can definitively diagnose it, would it also be necessary to say, if you're pulling from research, cite that within the report you're giving them as well?
We usually don't cite research into our reports.
Okay.
Usually don't. There, in the past, we used to do that. We used to like cite like the research or an article or something, and the AP was like, "Don't do that. It's just not good form." Because in a way, it's not a research paper. So it's more of a psychological or counseling report for your client. Yeah. So they don't like it essentially.
Okay.
Does the interpretive report do it in the same like structure as you want us to write it?
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
because we're at halfway through and it's good
Nope.
recommendations.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, cheers.
Think of it as like a tool to use.
Well, it almost kind of reads like AI too, in a sense. Maybe I'm wrong in that.
So-
It just feels like
Yes.
just an output.
You see how that has this line right here?
Mhm.
So clinicians like to use it and just sign their name, and they turn that in. So when I see this and I see clinicians use this, I immediately disregard it. I'm like, oh, trash. I'm not gonna use it. And families get mad, but I'm like, this is their end product. This is what you paid for. This,
Mhm.
this, okay, trash. Not considering.
Person brings it to your desk, you just
I just shred it. Yeah, I'm like,
Do
this
better.
is crap. Yeah. So, same thing. Scores are listed here and so forth. So it kind of follows the same format as the score report, but first it gives you a whole bunch of paragraphs to kind of follow and abide by. So, given that information, let me show you what a report looks like. So, let's take this report for example. You notice that it has demographics, right? It has a reason for referral or presenting problem. You also have the procedures they use. So here they use the WISC-5, select a subtest, and WJ select a subtest. They modified it probably because the client was very difficult to work with, right? Which they documented, so we know they did that. They also put a disclosure statement here because their state required it. Ours was not. And then background information went next. Solid pretty still, yeah, good. Observations went next, and then the results. So again, a very long report. Here's the WISC. So again, this kind of wording here is the same across the board. So you're not really changing this wording because it comes straight from the manual. The WISC is an individualized standardized test and measures common abilities. It's all the same wording. That doesn't really change. What does change is that they selected assessments only to incorporate a nonverbal index, which the WISC allows you to do if you're dealing with people who are non-English speakers or selectively mute or significant language delays. On top of that, they give you all these scores, and you see how they took the report and they really broke it down to the bare minimum and then added more information. So they took the WISC report, they added some of the same wording, but then they added their own information. So it's not 9 paragraphs now, it's just one small paragraph.
This is just an exercise in not wasting the client's time,
Yes.
essentially.
They have academic skills next, and at the very bottom here, they have a summary and then recommendations overall. And so for this specific report, the recommendation was to refer to the team at the school. Now, is that best practice?
No,
There could be more.
Poor practice.
yeah,
I find it lazy that you had no recommendation, you just said someone else deal with it.
yeah.
So, as a whole, the report did well with summarizing the data. Did well with documenting what they did. It did terrible when it comes to this. Not good. So let me show you one that's pretty decent. So, on this one, same kind of formatting. We have referral question, all the tests they administered, which was a crap ton. The background information, psychiatric health, family history, academic history, and then here's the mental stats exam here, which I liked, and the results. So again, the WISC, these are WISC 4, but same kind of wording, right? The WISC 4 is blah, 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 this age range, 6 are the same, and then they incorporated a graph for the WISC, and then this is their WISC interpretation. They literally took, I don't know, 35 paragraphs into 1.5. So a good clinician will review all that data and summarize it in a very concise way. So you want to be that good. You want to take all that data and then quickly document strengths and weaknesses, and not having to have 16 paragraphs, you have one solid paragraph.
Keep it brief.
Would you say that 8 to 10 page mark is like you should shoot for that in these reports?
Yeah.
So that 8 to 10 page mark would be per major test pattern.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
And then they also included subtests and the weaknesses and strengths of those. So again, it broke it down into a very simple 1 paragraph format, highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of its client. Then they go into achievement testing, again, using a graphic, which is appropriate. What you don't want to do is list this crap here. That's a no-no. Again, no-no. No-no. Delete that column. But it did list all the tests. And then here's a paragraph regarding those results. Then they go into learning memory and all the other tests. And then at the very bottom here, they have their summary, their diagnoses, DSM-4, and their recommendations. So, similar formatting to what you'll be doing.
I found the recommendation, the first line for the first sentence was, this needs to be dealt with immediately, as in like, immediately someone needs to continue doing
Yes.
this, instead of just, I hope someone gets the torch.
Yes.
So once you get into recommendations, do not understate your concern at all.
Yes. Okay, so your reports. So for this class alone, your reports are not going to include last names. It's going to be first name, last initial.
Is this document also in the?
Yes, it should be under report writing guidelines.
Perfect.
Oops. Okay. Your report should be on the information you gather during your interviews, doing your work, during your interactions, not fake data. It should be based on your clients. You also need to make sure that you have appropriate formatting and you have these subsections. You're gonna have referral, so because it's for this class, all you're saying is John was referred due to class requirements. Pretty simple. Test you administered, the background information, because you're dealing with people who you know, you're really looking at more education, school settings, current job, any kind of children, just very minimal information for your assignment. Behavioral observations, so again, mental stats exam. Groomed, cleaned, on time. Your results, your summary and impressions, and your recommendations. So you're gonna have all these sections in your report. Make sure you follow the worksheets. So in your textbook, there's a check sheet. Follow that to kind of guide you as to how to write your report and how to concisely and connect the results to each other. And then you're gonna make sure that you get recommendations that are appropriate. So typically for this class and this reports, each one of your reports, I need to see at least 3 to 5 recommendations. 3 to 5. Even if your client only has strengths, still give me recommendations. 3 to 5. 3 at the bare minimum, 5 if like you're solid. I prefer 5, but 3 is okay.
So say someone has really high scores in 3 categories and is still very good, but not as high in another. Say,
So how
say client is exceptional in all
Yeah.
categories, but may benefit from further instruction in this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You highlight the relative weakness. We call that. Yeah.
Relative.
Relative weakness. So compared to all your scores, this is a relative weakness to your other scores.
Like it was something being their weakest subject, but
Exactly.
still being,
And so is strength, but it's a
still
weakness.
being very good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Then you describe your results. You give an overall summary on the strengths and weaknesses of your client. And then you describe the strengths and weaknesses of each subtest and what it applies to your client. And again, making factual implications and based on your results alone. So your report's not gonna be very long. Highlight the strengths and weaknesses of your client. And again, if they have no weaknesses, but they have relative weaknesses, you can use that as well as your recommendations. So that being said, your report needs to have these specific sections. Cool? All right,
Yeah.
let's practice. So everyone have a computer? Kind of, sort of? You can share? So you need to pull up Word or Google Docs at this time.
If it's possible to go on my phone, I can. I have Google Docs there, but
That may
let me give it a shot while
Good luck.
Okay.
I'll look. I have a whole desktop, but I don't have a computer.
Let's say what you want on your
What spacing? Double or single?
single.
Oh, God.
Times New Roman 12.
What would you say is the average amount of time spent actually writing a report?
Everybody ready? Cool. All right. So the first thing you're gonna add in your report is you're gonna have a centered header, not heading, header, and you're gonna type confidential report, and you're gonna bold that statement here, like that. Then you're gonna underline that statement as well. And then tab over to the left. Now, some people like to include page numbers. You can, not required. I like it in case a client loses a paper or they misplace one, they know what order it goes in. So you can insert a page number. And then when you do that is you click insert, and then you click page number. And it usually goes in the top right, but you can also put it at the bottom right as well. depends on your preference. Alright, so let's go over the next part. So we're gonna have our name here. No, just bold it. And make up a name for your client. So I'm gonna use Thomas P. Then you're gonna tap over and then the gender. And then birth. Then race ethnicity.
I was going to ask, what is currently acceptable terminology for race and ethnicity? Because I know there are certain subtleties even with current terminology.
I would ask them
Okay.
and get their preferences. If they don't have preferences, then go with like the traditional standard.
Sweet.
Yep. And as far as the dates go, you can choose to use like the short phrasing, like 02/12/2014, or the long phrasing, depending on what you want to do.
Well,
Sorry, you may have the same question. I was gonna ask, what if, like, in terms of grade, if they're graduated, like, let's say someone that's at doctoral level, what would you put?
So you want to put a grade. Delete that row. Yeah.
Maybe
And then would date of assessment then get squared over?
Yeah.
Okay. What about educational status?
Mhm.
No. Okay.
And then date of assessment will go over here. Oh, very on it. Oh, is that it? Okay. So that's your basic demographic section. What comes next?
Presenting a reason for assessment.
Yeah. So referral information, right? So referral information over the problem.
And pressing enter twice between sections is
Okay.
perfect.
So we're gonna say unbolded, and then Thomas P is a. Simple wording, but in your case, you would say Thomas P is an 8-year-old student who's referred by the parent due to class requirements or due to graduate course requirements. That's your referral question or information.
Slight formatting question. Did you indent everything from the left?
No.
Huh. Is it not mine yet? Oh.
Was it,
Oh, and there's,
what was the spacing, was it one?
Single, yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Those words.
All right, what comes next?
Family background, history.
Procedures and others.
There you go. Procedures. And tests and nature. So you put observations slash mental status exam. You're kind of doing 2 for 1. And then
Is there a standardized mental status exam, or is that usually something that your department has specific for them?
both.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll post one of them you can use, but the leads to you. So if I do more informal or more formal. And then you're gonna spell out the test you're administering. So I'm gonna post what it should look like here. So of course you're only using one of them. So you're gonna pick the one that applies to your report, and then your next report will have one, your next report will have another one. You don't list all 3 of these because these are different reports. They're just here for you to see how they should be formatted in relation to the wording.
So is this standard, once you list it off, use the acronym in the rest of the report?
Yeah.
If you were doing an assessment on an adult, would you just say client interview instead of parent interview?
Yep. Good catch. What comes next?
Background info.
Yeah, background information. So depending on what you gather, you're gonna enter it into here. So some people like to have it just in one large format, including all background. So vocational, educational, psychological, counseling, familial, all one big format. Some people like to have subheaders, so like underline italicized headers to include subsections. Either way is fine, as long as it flows. So as long as it flows nicely, that doesn't really matter. There. So put in your background information here, and now what's next?
Behavioral observations.
Yep. Slash mental status exam. That will go next. And then what?
Results.
Okay. So for the WISC, we're going to use the same kind of format.
So even if you would already set it and gave the acronym in the procedures and test administered, it'd still say the full thing again, the test results?
On this one, yep.
Oh, because that's what people usually.
Exactly.
Okay.
So whenever you're switching to a different section, would it be a good idea to sort of, I guess, reset the use of acronyms then? Okay.
Yeah. Just so people can flow with like what you're trying to. you've done that, you would paste your table. So with tables in general, if it's split between two different screens, tab it down until you have one whole table. You don't want to be split. So go ahead and create this table for your widths. And now that we have our graph listed here, you would put the description large scores next.
This is making me realize simply knowing how Excel works is a marketable skill.
Yep.
God.
Yes.
Is everything bolded in the table?
No.
Is anything bolded, or is it all just?
All regular font.
For frame of reference, percentile is what percentage of the population they're above, right?
Yes. Good. So I took this chart here, I made it my own, and included only the information that's easy to read and understand. So 97, 97, 42, 42, and then descriptions here. So I limited all the fluff and made it more easy to read. And so on D2Wall, I posted a sample cognitive report. And essentially, you will see that I have listed a sample way to word your actual subtest. So do you see how I took that very long paragraph and I just highlighted the most important information so that we eliminated any kind of long verbiage or complicated verbiage. So on D2L, you'll see this kind of listed. Follow a similar format and write your own report. So now that we know what goes here, all your descriptions of your tests, what's next?
Conclusions?
Summary, yeah.
Summary, yeah. Sorry.
Secret. Tolerance B. So in this report, I've linked the strengths and weaknesses. So the full school IQ is 97, percentile rank 42. PSI is processing speed index, that's score 95, percentile rank 37. Working memory is WMI, score of 82, percentile rank of 12. So you're linking the strengths and weaknesses of the client. And then you have recommendations down here. Again, bullet format, number format, or paragraph format is okay. It does not matter.
Are there occasionally, well, I suppose it wouldn't be occasionally, but situations where you, like you said, just not many really big recommendations, but it's like, hey, if you want to make them better, do this. It's got to be a relief when that happens.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty much all you'll have for this report. So not super long. That's not awful. Now, of course, you have more data, more awful. But this, pretty easy.
Yeah.
The hard part comes for you to summarize your data, be able to connect it to the overall report, and then connect it to the recommendations. The WAST and the WISC will be easiest for you because you'll have interpreted reports to follow. The UJ, you do not. That one's gonna be your hardest one. And I did that on purpose. I could purchase it. I don't want to. I thought you should practice writing a full report from scratch. So on that one, it'd be a little tougher. There is a template posted as well that you'll follow, but for the most part, you need to create your own wording. So hopefully by then you feel pretty confident when writing your reports. Cool? Yeah. Short and sweet, not terrible. I posted this report into D2L, so you have a copy of that as well, with wording, formatting, kind of follow. And you also have sample reports in D2L when you cover in class. So if you're interested in reading more about those, what they look like, and how they formatted their wording, those are posted as well. The report guidelines are also posted in D2L. So those are all posted. Cool. Any questions? Will we be here next week? Will you be here next week? Not this class. What will you be doing?
Reading.
4, 5, 6, and 7, right?
Yes.
5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, because 4 was this one.
Today. Yeah.
Classes.
So make sure you refresh your memory on statistics. Did all of you take stats already? First semester?
Yes.
It's time to kind of go back and review those notes.
I love stats.
I like it too. Yeah. Yeah. All right, y'all. That's it for tonight.